Alright gang, welcome to this update. Thanks so much for tuning in. What I want to do over this time is to give you enough detail and enough update about all the information you might want about where St Mark's is going in the future and what it looks like for us, and at the same time not take up your entire day. So I'm going to try and keep this quick enough that you don't hate me by the end of it, but in-depth enough that it provides you with some real information. This is supposed to be a little bit of a springboard that maybe will give you a whole bunch of information, but also will leave you with some questions. And remember, we're going to gather, if you can make it, on Thursday the 23rd at 8 o'clock on Zoom. And that's an opportunity for you to bring your ideas and what you're thinking of, and to throw that into the mix as well, because there's so much more wisdom in the village than there is just in me. So for you to bring your ideas and what this has made you think of, maybe to ask for clarifications on things which I haven't communicated very clearly, and to ask anything you want, and I'll be around and the trustees will be around, and also to pray together for the future of our village. So really hope you can make it on Thursday. The link will be on the website, on the join-in page on the website. Teenagers, if you're watching this as well, I am fully aware that I'm not very interesting to listen to, but this is your church and you're really important to us. So I would love it if you could watch this for a little while as well, and then you will know where we're going, and you are so integral to everything we do. So that's where I'm going. But first off, want to thank you as we end this term and as we arrive at summer. I just want to say thank you so much, yes, you, for being part of our gang and for making the village the place that it is. And at Christmas time, who on earth would have predicted what this half of the year would have been like? None of us would have. And so I just want to say you have done a remarkable job. You've done a remarkable job individually. And as a village, I think we've done a really great job of continuing to love each other. So I don't want to rush past that, because my observation is that Corona just got thrown at us and we had to respond so quickly in every arena of your life, whether that was school or work or home or church or shopping or haircuts or whatever. We had to respond so quickly that actually maybe we haven't really taken a pause to realize the extent of what's happened. And if we just look around at the world, you know, all flights were stopped, the football was stopped, the trains were stopped, hairdressers were stopped, shops were shut, Parliament closed, borders in countries were implemented that haven't been implemented for years. It's just ridiculous. It's crazy. We were rationed essentially in what we were able to buy from shops. We've had to queue outside. We're having to get used to wearing masks. Schools were closed. Can you believe that? Wars haven't managed to close schools universally, and coronavirus did. So it's been huge. And so if you arrive at summer still bewildered, still thinking, what the dickens is going on? Still unsure, still finding yourself having conversations, either in your own mind or with other people in your bubble, that deciding who you can see and whether you need to see them outside, and whether you find yourself having to quarantine yourself for a week, having seen person X, so that you can then see person Y in 10 days' time. All of these are new things. All of those are draining. All of those are exhausting. All of those are destabilizing and disorienting. So to have done what you've done and to have made it this far, well done. To have done what we've done as team, as village, as a gang, and the way that you have thrown yourself into it has been brilliant. And I'm so grateful to be a part of our village. I say this a lot, and we don't compare ourselves to other churches, but I get to hang out with other church leaders, and it doesn't always work the way it does around St Mark's. And people aren't always as willing to just jump on board with fun as they are here. And so thank you for getting involved in challenges and for doing silly games and for inviting us into your front room for Zooms. And I know Zooms are exhausting, so that the fact that you've kept on jumping on them has been incredible. The way that you've involved yourself, the way that you've looked after each other, the way that you've continued serving is wonderful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. There's a piece of advice that somebody gave me once, and it was never start a list, because if you start a list, you'll always leave somebody off it, and then they'll be really angry. So I'm not going to start a list, but I want to thank you, everybody who's watching this, because you've contributed to what has been a really great transition little period for us. We've adapted really well as a church, so thank you for that. There are a couple of people I really do want to single out, though. The trustees have been incredible. When we signed up to be trustees of a church and a charity, none of us thought we'd be doing it in this current reality, in this current context. They've done a wonderful, wonderful job, and we are safe and secure as a charity and as a church now in the hands of Alice and John and Hannah and Alex Jones. And I get to go along to those meetings as well. And they've done like a fantastic job of putting into place policies and procedures which protect us all and which mean that St. Mark's can be around for a long time. So want to thank them for making good and quick decisions and showing real leadership in this time. And as you know, when you watch the news, leadership isn't something that everybody who's in a leadership position necessarily can do. Those guys have done it this time. So thank you to them. Thank you to the staff team. They've done a brilliant job. Some have stuck on and been able to work during this period and have had to kind of double their workload or shift what they were doing. Some have been on furlough over this time, and that's weird and strange, and they've done it graciously and kindly. And some have stepped back in, and that's been great as well to have them back around. Especially want to just publicly thank Becky, who's done an amazing job. Becky kind of... Her role is to organise me and to make sure that I don't, drive this train off the rails. And she does amazingly at that. I can't tell you how brilliant she is for our village. But also over the last, 4 months or so, has been every single week at every single youth and kids hangout. And youth, I know you will appreciate that. Kids, I don't suspect you're still watching this, but if you are, I know you've appreciated hanging out with Becky. She's done an incredible amount of work. And I've got to tell you, team, I've done youth and kids work in all shapes and sizes possible. And Zoom is just the weirdest and the hardest and the trickiest and the least rewarding because we don't get to hang out with each other. And Becky's done a remarkable job. And so publicly want to thank her as well for keeping that going. Okay. There's this saying that people that know much more than me about leadership say the first job of a leader is to define the reality. And you graciously let me call myself leader around here, whether I am or not. And so I want to define two realities for us. And these two realities form the foundation of everything that follows on from this. Reality number one, you were called by Jesus to follow him. You are a disciple of Jesus. Some of us are card-carrying, flag-waving members. We're like, yeah, we're absolutely on board with this. Everybody knows we're a Jesus person. We're figuring it out as we go, but I'm in. Count me as part of the team. Some of us have just joined recently. Some of us are hesitant in that. Some of us have way more questions than we think we have answers. Some of us feel like we're a long way further back on the road, but the point is there is a God. You know that. You've seen the stars. You've seen the sunset. You've held a newborn baby. You've felt your soul awaken to wonder. There is a God. We see him most clearly in Jesus. He has given us grace through some deeper magic that none of us understand on the cross. He's given us grace and lavished life upon us, and he's called you to follow him. You're a disciple of Jesus. Everything else is working it out from that point. We're trying to love God with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind, and to love our neighbour as we love ourselves. Because as we've learnt this term, me and my neighbour are connected. We're Ubuntu. We're not separated. So that's our job. And the job of a disciple has always been and always will be to, in whatever culture and context you find yourselves in, to figure out what it is to follow Jesus in that context. There's a couple of things that are pretty consistent, I observed throughout the history of the church. It usually involves speaking, if you like, prophetically to power, usually some government or some emperor or some dictator or some army general, and saying, actually, although you think you have power, we think we know somebody with more power, and we obey that power more than we obey your power, and we speak prophetically. And we don't think what you're doing is right. The other thing that catches the attention of people always about the disciples is that they always serve the hungry. They always clothe the naked. They always sit with the lonely. They always show compassion to the grieving. They always share generously with those who are starving and who don't have, who lack in their life. They always shout for and champion the cause of the marginalized and the oppressed. And they've always caught the attention of their society and their culture for doing exactly that. The Christians were perceived by the might of the Roman Empire as a threat. because they dared to say that Caesar wasn't the ultimate power, and they gave gladly of everything they had and shared and served and loved people. And that's still the same today. It's still the same in house churches across Asia where they're not allowed to meet as church and where it's dangerous for them to do so. They still serve other people. I heard from a pastor in India this week where it's illegal to be who he is and do what he does, and faces oppression every day from a nationalistic Hindu government, and where Christians are put to the end of the line of government handouts of rice. They're serving people. They have to do it with, not just a mask that we have to wear. They have to do it with complete face covering so that some people don't see who they are, because if they knew who they were, then they would imprison them or beat them up. It's still what they're doing today. It's what people are doing across the world. It's what people like Toybox are doing right now in serving children who need access to soap to live on the streets. We serve the poor. We speak prophetically to power. We follow Jesus, and we figure out what it is to be a disciple. That's reality number one. And we as disciples are always on mission. Nothing changes ever about that. And if I have a job, my job is to resource and encourage you as a disciple, because it's not always easy. In fact, sometimes it's actually actively difficult. And so to encourage you and resource you and to do it as Village, that's why Village is important, because doing it on our own, that's a death nail. So context number one, reality number one is you're a disciple. Reality number two is you're a disciple right now in and around Milton Keynes or in the UK, in 2020 with coronavirus happening. And that's a particular context at a particular time. We might wish we were in Germany or Korea or New Zealand, where they seem to be doing it a lot better, but we're not. We should be thankful that we're not in other countries that are doing it a lot worse, or where there's much more poverty and cramped living conditions. This is our particular context. And like it or lump it, there is maybe not people and person-focused, strong, dynamic leadership in our nation. There are leadership decisions which are thrust to you and I as individuals and as a village to make. And it is therefore imperative that we show leadership and wisdom and courage and grace and love and hope to all people. Not expecting it to come down from Caesar, not expecting it to be done for us, but committed to the fact that because we are disciples of Jesus, we will be the ones that whatever else is happening around us will be committed to following Christ, committed to the way of Jesus, committed to resisting the empire, as we've looked at this term, committed to loving those who feel like they exist in the shadows of our culture and of our society. None of that changes. The only thing that changes is we find ourselves in a new culture and a new context than we did 6 months ago, a year ago. And we have to figure it out afresh how we fulfill reality number one. So I want to outline where we're going to go over the next little while. I want to resist and challenge a couple of sentences which are spoken widely about shops and about churches, and that you might have used or seen used or be online or whatever. One is that we are reopening. The second is that, what is the second? The second is that we're going back to normal. Okay, first one, we're reopening. No, we're not, because we never shut. We are disciples of Jesus. You didn't close. So St. Mark's isn't reopening because it never closed. It just met in different ways and different times. So that's nonsense. The second thing is that we're going back. No, we're not. Because the reality of the moment is that it's impossible to go back to what used to be in any sphere, whether that's the hairdressers, the shops, the office, the schools, or church. We're not going back to anything. And I want to pause for a moment, and just as we begin to say St. Mark's is going to change again, and I know some of us are change Marines, and we're like, yes, great, we haven't changed for a week, this is good. Some of us, actually, we really like St. Mark's how it was before. And maybe St. Mark's was a lighthouse or a lifeboat for you. And it was a place where you found solace and safety and security, and you really enjoyed turning up and being able to sit round a table and eat brioche and drink coffee with people that were friendly, and ask for prayer from anyone, and share at open mic easily, and run around with silly games, and for children to come and sit on your table whether they belong to your family or not, and to hang out with you. And actually, to not do that anymore is a real point of grief and sadness. And I absolutely get that. Team Oxley has worked our collective butts off for 8 years now, for St. Mark's as it was. And you and I probably feel a profound sadness that it isn't going to be getting back to what it was anytime soon, if ever. And so as we say that, I don't want to rush past. I'm excited about the future, of course I am. But I'm also sad that it's changed, and the change isn't one that we chose, it's one that was placed upon us, and we didn't have any say in that. And so there is a sadness with it, and I don't want to rush past that, and I really miss hanging out with you, and I really miss Sundays when we just got to waste time together over coffee, and I missed the fact that 2 weeks ago we were supposed to have a weekend at Heron's Lodge, and we would have just thrown frisbees and toasted marshmallows and water balloons and who knows what else, and it would have been great. And I really miss having lunch and with different people throughout the week, and I really miss hanging out with the staff in the office, and I miss you. And so let's not rush past that. It is sad, but also we are not able to go back. So what are we able to do? What will we be doing? And what will St. Mark's look like into the future? So here's some things we're going to continue doing. We're going to continue growing as disciples, believing that if ever there was a moment, if ever there was a need for people of peace and of grace and of unshakable joy, of contentment in their lives, of self-sacrificial service of others, of generosity and joy, if ever there was a need for a group of those people to be selflessly serving others and loving God, it's now. And those people are disciples. And so we're going to continue growing as disciples. And in fact, I'm going to throw even more weight than ever, more resources than ever, more energy than ever into helping you grow as a disciple. Because we're a little bit more dispersed now, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Because we're dispersed now, it means we'll resource that in different ways and help you in different ways. And some of it is going to be more self-feeding than it ever has been. But that's exciting to me because you're way better at feeding yourself than I am at feeding you. The second thing is we're going to continue serving the city. Of course we are. Meals is opening back up at the moment. As I speak, Nina is in the new warehouse of Food Bank, working with them. They've kindly given us a corner of their venue for a little while, and we're working with them over the summer, and who knows where that will lead as we go forward. Of course, we're going to continue feeding hungry children and families across the city. And let's be honest, that need is not going to decrease next term. That need is going to increase. And so we're committed to still doing that. We're going to continue to cheer people on and encourage people and just give away airtime to people. We're going to continue to lead Pray MK and to ask people across the city to pray in a united way, believing that prayer in a quiet room actually does stuff because we're praying to an actual God who actually believes and who actually cares and who has actual power to change things. We're going to continue to serve the city through our work in domestic violence. We're going to continue to bless people in 1,000 different ways and in more creative ways. We're going to continue to serve the refugee families that we work with and try and love and support and encourage. So we're going to continue all of that. Of course we are. We're going to continue in faith and hope and love and growing in those things. We're going to continue where we can to meet physically, and we're going to continue to prioritize joy and the village when we do that. We're going to continue to toast marshmallows wherever we can, whenever we can, in a way that is safe and loving and secure for everyone. We're going to continue to hang out together. We're going to continue to disproportionately focus on young people and children wherever we can. We're going to continue to hang together. Kids, youth, of course we're going to continue hanging out. We are going to continue giving and being generous. We're going to continue our journey, and we're on step 1 of this, in becoming a much more inclusive and diverse community. I think we have a good culture in our hearts. We want to see that more. We want to see more nations represented in our village. We want to see people of different abilities represented amongst us. We're going to continue to innovate and to change, and we're going to continue to have fun as we follow the Master. Here's some things we're not going to do. We're not going to meet all together on a Sunday morning regularly for the rest of this year. Like, unless somebody creates a vaccine that they pump into the water that we all accidentally drink out of the taps, it's not going to happen. Because we are always driven by love. We want to love people. We want to create safe spaces for people. We want to do things that are wise. We want to make sure that whatever we do, we can be accessed by the most number of people possible. We don't want to put people at risk by meeting. We choose to prioritize. We might meet in different ways, which maybe feel a little bit alien to us to begin with, but we'll choose to do that for the sake of the other person. We don't want to make them feel anxious. We don't want to pass on bugs to them. We don't want to give them difficult decisions. We don't want to mean that they can't come because they live miles away or they haven't got the internet. We want to make sure that whatever we do is accessible and loving to everybody. So we're not going to meet. Now, here's the thing. The gift of this moment, coronavirus, COVID-19, is terrible and destructive for everybody across the planet. There's nothing good about it. But that doesn't mean that we can't create good from this moment. And ironically, here's one of the gifts of the moment, that we as church can begin to realize that we're not locked down. We're not locked in to a particular pattern. We used to meet every Sunday in a place, and that was pretty much, for most of us, the only interaction we had with either our faith or certainly with the village. Some others met in other ways and times. Now we've realized we can meet with different technology, different size groups, different ways of doing teaching and hanging out. We can meet in 1,000 more creative ways. We're not locked in any longer to just meeting on Sundays. So as our new rhythm and pattern emerges, it might be that we meet on Zoom sometimes. It might be that we meet physically in small groups sometimes. It might be that we prioritize walks because we can do teaching and learning in other ways via YouTube or whatever. It might be that we decide we're going to have a Sabbath meal this Friday night and not meet on Sunday, and so we're going to do that instead. We're not locked into a particular pattern. We can break out and break free and be much more fluid. So Sunday gatherings physically, we're not rushing back. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff in the news about churches reopening. Well, point one, we didn't close anyway. They're reopening to something that doesn't look at all like something we would like to do. Which of us wants to get together to stay 2 meters apart, to not be able to see each other, hug each other, to not be able to have tea and coffee, to not be able to do kids' work, to not be able to move around easily, but to have to sit still a long way. I mean, that's just no fun for anybody. So we're not doing that. We're also not going to meet as a village every single Sunday on Zoom. Because it's exhausting, isn't it? Woo! And I know some of us will be really glad to hear that. We're not going to... What we've done this term is adapt what we used to do to a new medium, and we've done it brilliantly, and we've had a blast, and I've really enjoyed all of our Zoom village hangouts, and thank you again for jumping in on those. But I don't want to do that every Sunday of my life ad nauseum. And neither do you. It's not novel anymore. And so we want to find a sustainable way that grows us as disciples and allows us to meet more and to be closer. And so that might mean a lot more outdoor things. It might mean a lot more smaller groups. It might mean a lot more walks. It might mean a lot more marshmallows around bonfires, hopefully, fingers crossed. So here's a tip. Make sure you've got a good coat, because as we go into autumn, we're going to be outdoorsy people much more. And we're going to have picnics on driveways rather than Sunday gatherings all the time. So that's what's not going on. I know some of us are like, what do I do on Sunday mornings? Don't worry, I'm coming back to that. We will still do that. I'm hoping we'll still be able to gather, hopefully at Heron's Lodge for an 8th anniversary at the end of August. We're still waiting to hear whether they can open. That'll be outside, it'll be distanced, it'll be picnicky. Maybe we can throw a movie on a big screen or something outside. I don't know. We're still waiting to hear that. I'm pretty sure we'll still be able to do bonfire night. Maybe we'll do carols around the bonfire as well. Who knows? Our stuff will be outdoors for the sake of everybody and because it's good fun. So keep an eye out. So here's what I want to say. If we're free, if we can focus on growing as disciples, if we're not locked into the old rhythms anymore, what are we going to do? So really quickly, for those of you that like models and diagrams, here is, I think, and who knows, but I think what our life will look like in the coming months, and maybe years. There are 4 areas where I think you and I need to be involved if we grow as disciples of Jesus. There are 4 areas which are just so incredibly important. The first is the inner part of the circle is your core. Developing a strong core. This stuff happens behind closed doors. This happens between you and God. This is the time where you develop a rhythm, a habit, a pattern of engaging with the presence of God, which is right there with you right now, where it's you take on some study, where it's you invest in some prayer, where it's you sit down maybe early in the morning or late night and invest some time in purposefully focusing on the presence and the voice of Jesus in your life. It's you growing as a disciple. Honestly, gang, this is where the magic happens. People like me, we like to pretend that the magic happens on a Sunday morning. It honestly doesn't. The magic happens. The people that follow Jesus most closely, the people that when you meet them have the most joy, peace and grace in their lives, they're the people that invest in this core the most. And so as we go forward, I'm going to really be helping us resource and do that really, really well. It's hard. Those of you who have tried to do it in the past will know it's difficult and it feels lonely, so it's not going to be an isolating experience. We're going to do it together as village and as community and cheer each other on that, which makes it much more enjoyable and possible. But that is where the magic happens. And if we're going to grow as disciples, that central part of our core is vital. The next level out on this diagram is, I'm trying to find a better label, but a car share group. A group of maybe 3 or 4 people, no more than you can fit in your car, because if it's more than that, it's too many to talk to deeply, who you invest time with on a consistent, regular basis. There's this moment in one of the Bible books, and it talks about 2 disciples walking along the road. They're leaving Jerusalem. They're going to a town called Emmaus. It's just after Jesus has been killed, and they're gutted. They're mourning. They're destroyed internally. Everything they had hoped for in the future has just been wiped away. And it says that they're talking about the things that they've seen and the things that they've heard and the things that they've learned in those days. Well, that's what a car share is. It's where you, with 2 or 3 other people, sit down every week maybe, and you say, look, hey, did you see that film? Did you see that football result? Also, here's what I'm learning about Jesus. Here's what I'm wrestling with. I've noticed that I'm increasingly impatient with those around me. I want to grow in patience. Could you help me? Could you pray with me about patience? And it's where you sit with other people and you listen to them. And it's so important again. Some of these car share groups will be St. Mark's based, and there might be kind of official ones that we start up. Some of you, I know, will have 2 or 3 other people that actually you've been journeying with them for a long time, and you don't need to add another layer of complexity into your life, but to do it on purpose and to say, actually, hey, you 3, let's do this every week. Let's find a space that we can meet every week. Let's encourage each other. Let's figure out some questions that we want to ask one another. Let's create a rhythm to this. The next stage out is the village. You know what the village is. We spend a load of time hanging out at the village. This is, what does it look like when a whole bunch of disciples gather? And it might be that they gather in tens, or it might be that they gather in hundreds or thousands, doesn't matter. What does the village do when it gets together? Well, it feasts, and it toasts marshmallows, and it plays games, and it shares joy, and it celebrates when somebody's 2 years old and they've just gone through a whole night without wetting the bed, and it celebrates when somebody does something great in their maths class, and it celebrates when somebody gets a new job, and it mourns when you don't get the new job, and it grieves profoundly with each other when there is illness and sickness and death in the community. But when the village gets together, it's a feast time. When the village gets together, my hunch is that less and less, well, we need to sit and listen to me, because we can do that bit in other ways. We learn in the core and in the car share primarily. And so when the village gets together, we're freed up all of a sudden to go for walks, to go fly a kite, to do crazy trips to the beach for the day, to spend time serving our community and packing meals boxes or painting fences or putting murals in dark, dangerous underpasses or whatever is good to bless the city. And then the final level out is the arena. That's the video just stopped because I went on for too long. There you go. There's an ugly cut. The final level out is the arena. That's the place where you as a disciple work. That's where you're on mission. That might be your family. It might be your street, it might be the city at large, it might be your workplace, but it's the place where you're called to be a bright, shining light as a disciple of Jesus. And everybody has a calling. And so my job is to help and resource you and encourage you to be a disciple on mission in that arena, and you're going to grow in the core. So that's what it's going to look like, and we're going to focus on that. And that's a really quick run through of kind of 6 months of praying and thinking for me. So don't worry if it doesn't all make sense. It will become natural to us. And we'll focus on each one of those. And so there'll be a whole bunch of focus on how do you grow as a disciple when you're 5? How do you grow as a disciple when you're 55? How do you institute a car share group? What do we do as Village when we gather? And how do we bless people as individuals and as a village? What's our arena as a whole village? So that's kind of the model that we're going to work with going forwards. And we will invest and resource in each area. And my question to you is, could you begin to, if you're not already, think about how you involve yourself in each area? Because my greatest hope for you is that you're a disciple of Jesus who feels like it adds worth and value to your life, and you're able to do the same to bless others. That's how you grow. You can't bypass it. You can't just turn up to the Village on an ad hoc basis. If that's all you do, then of course 6 months later you're going to think, I don't really know much more about Jesus than I used to, and I don't feel that much closer to him, and I'm not sure that this thing is that deep in my life, this faith that I have. Of course it isn't, because the core is where the magic happens. Anyway, that's the diagram that we're going to base everything on for the future. And it means that although we might not meet every Sunday, we'll meet lots of Sundays. We will meet every week. We might meet in different ways and with different focus. And it's just as important sometimes that the Village gathers to toast marshmallows, or to paint fences, or to mow lawns for people, or to go to the beach and fly kites, or to go paddleboarding, or to gather late night and pray and to intercede for the city, or to pray a walk around the hospital or whatever. That's as important as anything else. And so we're freed up, and we're not locked into having to do the same old pattern of meeting. And so once we begin to get our heads around that, and that's a massive gear shift, I understand that. Once we begin to get our heads around that, I hope you feel, as I do, that actually it's so much more exciting. We're so much more free. We can do so much more. We're not locked into having to listen to me waffle on. You're going to grow, I promise. You're going to grow so much more as a disciple of Jesus. And as that happens, I absolutely know that he's going to whisper exciting stuff into your life. And my hope and my assumption is that if we follow this model and if we commit to it, then over the next few years, all kinds of crazy things that none of us can predict right now will happen. Because when you follow Jesus, it's a wild adventure of joy and grace. So that's where we're going. So really quickly, I know this has gone on for a long time. I'm so sorry. What do I need from you? Well, number one, stay committed. Stay committed to the Village. There's this isolating false voice that always happens in our ears, and the isolating false voice is this: that it doesn't matter if I don't turn up. It doesn't matter. Nobody will miss me. I don't add anything. And particularly when so much of our lives now are in isolation in some way, shape or form, it always feels like it just doesn't matter. Do you know what? I'm gonna veg out and watch the telly. It won't matter. That group won't matter it won't mind if I'm not there. We will mind. It does matter. We miss you when you're not here. It's so much better with you. Decide now to commit to the Village, to the gang. Don't give up on it. Don't decide that it can become less of an important thing. As a disciple of Jesus, commit now to passing this on to the people around you, to passing the light on, to blessing others, to commit to the gang. Second thing is to pray, and to begin now over the summer to invest more in prayer, believing that incredible things happen when we pray. And if ever there's a moment where we've realized it's spinning out of control, we need your help, Jesus. This is it. Okay, one final thing. In our meetings over the last few weeks and months, the trustees have rightly pointed out to me that I haven't given a financial update for a long time. And so I'm really sorry about that. It used to be a fairly regular thing that we did. And certainly every year we'd go over the finances because it's our money. And I haven't done that for a while. So I want to do that now. That was a right thing to do, to pull me up on that. So sorry. Many times churches don't talk about money because either they're embarrassed of it, or because they think that it's not a spiritual thing, or they have some kind of weird spiritual understanding. We're not embarrassed about money. and our understanding is that it's incredibly spiritual, and that it's a reflection of what's going on in our hearts, and we want to follow Jesus with our wallets just as much as we do with anything else. So here's some things about money. And before I start about money, I understand that all of us have our own thing about money. And some of us, we normally pick that up from our parents, but as soon as I talk about money, there'll be a different thing going on in your hearts. So that's okay. First thing I want to say is, if you find yourself in financial need, if you find yourself in the next few months particularly, if you find yourself in hardship, we have a hardship fund. It's not massive, we're not millionaires, but the church has a hardship fund, and it's designed and it's ring-fenced, and its purpose is to be able to help people when they need it. We've paid for counselling for people. We've paid for rent or mortgage payments. We've paid bill payments. We've helped people out with their cars. We've helped people out with food, that kind of stuff. So if you need it, and there's no shame in that. If you need it, please just tell me, and it's there, and the money's there, and we can help out. And our goal always is that nobody goes without. It's a joke now at St. Mark's that somebody might need to borrow a ladder at some point. But the reason I started that sentence is because if you remember in Acts 2, it describes the early church, and it says they met in each other's homes, they shared food, they had glad and sincere hearts. They shared all their stuff. They shared their ladders and their hedge trimmers. If one person in the gang's got a hedge trimmer or a jet washer, we don't all need to buy one. We can share it around. If one person in the gang's got a ladder, then we don't all need one. We can share it around. If some of us have got money that is surplus, and some of us do, we don't need to keep it. We can share it around. That's how the church works. You might find yourself in a position today that you need money and you need help. There's no shame in that, because in another instance later on, you'll be the person that is able to help. So thing number one, if you need help, please ask, and that offer is always there, and we'll always try and do as much as we can. Thing number two is to say, I want to let you know financially where we are, and all this in the context and the reality of, for churches and for charities at the moment and into the future, it's a pinching moment. It's a difficult time. Meals is doing fantastic. Last year was the first year that Meals was operational. We used to run Make Lunch. It now runs in 35 schools as opposed to the 6 or 7 that we used to be in for Make Lunch. And last year, remarkably, miraculously, wonderfully, thank you, God, that was the first year that Meals ran completely off its own budget. The church, if you like, didn't sub it out at all. That's remarkable, because we used to sub it out 100%, and then we started raising money, and now last year we didn't need to sub it out at all. That's incredible, and we can commit to doing just as much this year, except we're going to need to do more. So maybe you could pray through how we support St. Mark's Meals. That's ring-fenced money. For St. Mark's, the general pot, we have any charity and church that wants to run well does is they have reserves. And reserves are there where we have the money in the bank, and we keep that money so that on a rainy day when everything hits the fan, we're able to still pay. If there's no income, we're still able to pay staff for a notice period, for instance. We're still able to get out of any contracts that we're into, or if we owned any property, we could still pay the mortgage on that kind of thing. So we've historically had reserves. Over the last 18 months, we've drained on purpose those reserves, recognizing that we are a bigger organization than we used to be, and we needed to make some changes. We needed to employ different people. We needed to employ more people. We need to invest more in supporting the Syrian family for longer than, and to a greater extent than maybe we'd anticipated. But those are all Jesus things. And so on purpose, we've drained a lot of the reserves. We've spent those wisely, but the money has gone down. We now run on a budget, which we meet every month pretty much. So over the next few weeks and months, the trustees are putting together some fantastic policies and procedures to build those reserves back up, because that's what protects our staff. Is what means we're able to be here for the long term. We want to be here we don't want to be a flash in the pan that celebrates its 8th birthday and closes its doors on the same day. We want to be here for a long term, and so that's what we're doing. We're rebuilding those reserves. We will never make a ministry decision based on money. If the Syrian families need supporting, we'll support them. If hungry children need feeding, we'll feed them. We don't stop doing stuff because of money. We'll pray in, we'll go get it, we'll work for it, we'll sacrifice for it. Money doesn't lead us. Jesus does. But the way that the church works is that we give. And so here's my thing. You as a disciple, I as a disciple, are supposed to be generous. We're supposed to give. We're supposed to bless others if we're able, first, with what we're able to give. If you're able to give to St. Mark's, I promise you we'll do good stuff with it. I think we get enormous bang for our buck. I think we do an incredible amount of good. And we spend it wisely and well and accountably. If you want to give it to somewhere else, and if it's kingdom stuff, and you're generous with it, I think Jesus is well chuffed with that. And I am too. As long as it's not to a cat's home, I don't really care. I'd love it to be St. Mark's. It can be anywhere. But what my hope is that we're a community of generous disciples of Jesus. If you want to give to St. Mark's, if St. Mark's is something that's important to you, if it's a home to you, if it's helped you, if it resources you, if it encourages you, if you drink its coffee in the olden days when we used to have coffee, and you want to be able to give, then jump on the website. There's a giving page. It's called Contribute. And there's ways that you can give straight through the website. It's all gift aid kind of efficient. You can give. It's honestly most helpful if it just goes into the general pot on a regular basis. If you want to just give to the hardship fund, you can. If you want to give to meals, you can. If you want to give to the refugee support, you can. And so I'd love you to think that through and to pray that through over the summer. It might be that you set up a direct debit 5 years ago when you started coming and you haven't thought about it since. And actually, you've lost your job in the meantime and you need to stop that direct debit and you need to, or make it less because actually it's throwing you into debt. That isn't helpful to you. And so maybe you need to change it. It might be that you set it up 5 years ago and you've been promoted 16 times since and you're now a multimillionaire, but you're still giving us £2.50 a quarter. Maybe you could raise that. And so I'd love you to pray about it and think about it because we want to be here for the long haul. Hope that makes sense. To be really clear, we're not in debt. We're not overdrawn. We don't owe any money. We are doing well and we want to make sure that we do better and always handle our money in a wise and in a transparent and in an accountable way, pooling our resources and showing love and serving people across the city as much as we possibly can. If you want to know more details on that, then please either shoot me an email or ask on Thursday when we gather. Final thing to say is we're gathering on Thursday for questions at 8 and for ideas that you have at 8 and for prayers that we can pray to the Lord together at 8. The 26th, the Sunday, will be our final kind of village gathering of the year. Historically, for the last, 8 years, we've always taken August off. And as a team, as a village, we've just Sabbathed. And we've thrown ourselves into resting and barbecuing and throwing frisbees around the park. This year is the same, but it's also different. And so this year, Becky's putting together a list of hangouts. And I know some of you are leading those hangouts. Some will be physical, some will be online that you'll be able to dive into over the summer. That list will hopefully be out next week. Also, though, I know some of us, it's just lonely at the moment and it's hard at the moment, and seeing other people's faces is really important at the moment. And so just to take all the Sundays off doesn't seem right to us at the moment. So throughout August at 10:30 each Sunday, we'll still keep the link open and we'll still gather for coffee and whatever else you want to bring. But it'll just be to chat and to hang out. I need some time off, and so I'm not going to prepare any teaching. Can I get an amen for that? There'll be no games or any of that. It'll just be checking in with the gang. There'll be other opportunities as well to go for walks, distanced, and to meet up in safe ways, and to do some stuff on Zoom as well. So check out the website over the summer, and to stay committed would be amazing. But if you can be around on the 26th, that'd be great to go out with a bang, to finish off with where we've got to this term, and to bless each other as some of us get away over the summer, some of us do staycations, some of us carry on. But it's important for you to Sabbath over the summer too, and to take stock and to start journaling and to write, wow, that happened to me this half year. What has it exposed in me? Maybe you have, as you've watched the Trellis series. If you haven't done that, where have you been? Subscribe to the YouTube channel and catch up. Maybe if you've watched that, you're thinking, there were some things that I wanted to implement. Maybe you could start implementing those over the summer. Maybe you have implemented some of them and you want to share that with people. in your car shares. I should have said about car shares, some of the Zoom rooms, I think the Zoom rooms have probably run their course. They're really important for a moment for us to dive into. Some will carry on, but it's not going to be something, that's not going to be the only way you can gather as a car share. Some people might want to car share with neighbours or families or different people. Some of it over Zoom, some of it over a table, some of it socially distanced, some of it online. Doesn't matter. There you go. That is a lot of time. Thank you. Please bring questions and ideas. And I want to say this in closing. We've said this so many times. There is more wisdom in the village and in the room than there is in me. And that's never been more true than in this moment. None of us trained for this. I didn't train for how to lead a church in this moment and in this context. I didn't train for how to unlock and how to make a church community even more fluid. I didn't train to how to do stuff online. I didn't train for coronavirus. None of that. Which means you are just as trained for this moment as I am. So if you have ideas, if you have observations, if you see us and me heading towards a brick wall and it's going to be a train wreck, let me know, throw some ideas in. Can you serve? Yes, you can. Do you have an idea that you feel the Lord is whispering to you as you strengthen your core? Then let's go for it. And if I can help coach you and encourage you, then the answer is yes. Sabbath over the summer. Keep cheering each other on and being the church that you are. Thank you for everything you've done. Let's work together to make sure that we create a future which is even more full of joy and grace, where there are pockets of our culture and our society which find themselves in even greater levels of depth of pain, of anxiety, of depression, of debt, of hunger. Let's rush into those places with even more joy. Let's do it together. Let's have fun whilst we're doing it. Let's pray for one another. Hopefully see you on Thursday. In the meantime, may God bless you with peace deep down. May God bless you with grace lavishly in your life. May you know joy. May you know hope. And may you know the presence of God with you now and for the rest of the day. See you soon.